Hey everyone, Kevin here, and welcome back to my channel. So, I was chatting with a handful of former and current teachers actually, and one brought up an interesting interaction she had with one of her students who essentially asked her to, quote, stop burying them in essays that don't matter. This spawned a very long conversation that ended up as a LinkedIn post with over 50 comments from people who fell on both sides of the argument. One side that essays and most assignments in education these days are pointless, and the other who still find all of that very meaningful. It made me want to talk about it because I've argued until I'm blue in the face at this point that the public school system no longer really meets the needs of anyone these days, and that often assignments devolved into things that assessed nothing of consequence. Or worse, worksheets of some variety, which I always call just shut up sheets, by the way, because that's all they made the kids do rather than learn. That lack of creativity, though, is one of the leading reasons why teachers are leaving the classroom, because there's no room to do or try new things at all. Teachers feel like they stagnate a few years in, and not growing for years on end isn't normal in any career. So, all of this brings up an interesting question. Are most assignments, particularly essays, no longer useful? Are they actively harming our kids and making it so they don't grow now, too? And like I said, teachers themselves in that conversation we had couldn't even agree. Me, on the other hand, though, I was actually on both sides of the argument and felt everyone was actually arguing for the same thing, just from different perspectives. So, to start with, I'm going to come out and say yes, academia deeply loves its essays and research papers that often amount to busy work that barely ever gets read by most teachers and professors. We can all remember those annoying standardized essays that, while yes, made you argue a point usually, they often came back months later with some random grade that didn't mean anything beyond verifying that the school itself was meeting state benchmarks. The scores themselves are meaningless and never really affected students in any meaningful or constructive way. Same with most class assignments, which have them do work for the sake of meeting the grade level standards that educators are supposed to teach and get them to meet by the end of the year, but which don't really have students learn anything they can use later from either a hard or soft skill point of view. We fundamentally have to ask ourselves, are we having students write to dissect an idea, or are we forcing them to write just for the sake of writing? Toward the end of my time in the classroom, I genuinely realized just how much of learning these days isn't practical and only theoretical. That doesn't help students grow and just gives teachers a way to check a box. And believe me, the boxes administrators forced teachers to meet and fit into were numerous. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The evaluation system has been weaponized against teachers and has effectively been used to create a gotcha culture in education, which has bled over onto the students who often aren't getting innovative and dynamic things to talk or write about in class anymore because of what teachers have been forced to be. I certainly wasn't the teacher I wanted to be toward the end of my career, and fully admit to you right now that I disengaged heavily in those last several months where I effectively gave students this kind of work. Assignments I knew weren't likely to be anything more than busy work, but it's all I had the power to do. But with all that being said, I also didn't agree that essays and most assignments are inherently pointless, like many people were saying in that message thread. Because if used correctly, essays and research papers can be incredibly valuable for learning and the development of critical thinking. We all know how many people these days are entering the workforce lacking these kinds of skills, to the point that they struggle dealing with business documents and the like. I mean, I made an entire video a while back on how literacy rates among graduating seniors have fallen to historic lows, and a lot of that is because we unfortunately do assign essays that don't make them critically think or develop their reading and writing skills. I mean, most people are used to getting all of their information from reading headlines or watching TikTok videos rather than doing actual research to obtain all the information they need to make a logical choice. Something they should be able to do as citizens when they go to vote, for instance, huh? This is exactly why whenever I assigned essays, I had students do research, check their facts against primary and secondary sources, draw conclusions from what they read, and then use all of that to form strong, logical arguments backed up with actual evidence. It made them stronger individuals, and I know they use those skills later in life. I mean, I did too. I became such a good writer in college because all of my professors made me write and dissect things in this way, to the point that my capabilities as a writer were noticed by the university, and I was offered a job while I was still a student as a writing tutor because of it. It was a nice job that also gave me skills I would use as a teacher later on. Oh, yeah, and after that, I was appointed chief editor of our historical journal, where I oversaw a dozen other editors and led the university to their inaugural first place in the national competition for historical journals. I learned a great deal from those experiences and still look upon them very favorably. I grew as a person, a teacher, a writer, and learned how to collaborate better with other people, which admittedly wasn't my strong suit at that age. So, you see, I agree that most essays and assignments we give students these days are pointless and do bury them in things that don't matter, but that's more of an indictment of the school system and what it's forcing teachers to do rather than the work itself. Because if given their autonomy back, educators can absolutely give students assignments that would be greatly beneficial to their cognitive and behavioral growth. We can't condemn all essays just because they're being inappropriately used. It would be like saying all pencils are bad and don't write well when you're trying to write with the eraser instead of the end you're supposed to. Both sides have a point, but I think we're all actually arguing for the same thing: the ability to make those essays and assignments relevant again. And our kids already know that they aren't right now, hence how that conversation started in the first place. But guys, thanks for watching today's episode. If you aren't already subscribed, please do. Every like, comment, and new person really helps my channel grow, and it has been steadily lately, so I really would like to keep getting these messages out to people. But for now, I've been Kevin, and I will see you in the next video.